Empress Lu, the woman who ruled ancient China. The palace smells like incense and fear. Not the sharp fear of battle, something quieter, older, the kind that settles into walls after years of watching the wrong people disappear. You stand inside the early court of the Han Dynasty, where silk curtains drift softly in the air and every smile hides calculation. Because empires are never truly peaceful at the top, they just learn how to hide the violence better. And no one understands that faster than Empress Lu. But she doesn't begin as an empress. That's important, because history often remembers powerful women only after they become dangerous, not while they're surviving. You see her earlier, before the throne, before the silk robes and imperial seals. Married to a man named Emperor Gaozu of Han, long before anyone calls him emperor. And back then, there is nothing glamorous about their life. No golden halls, no armies kneeling, just instability. War. The brutal collapse of the Qin dynasty leaves China fractured, violent, starving for whoever can seize control next. And in chaos like that, people reveal who they really are. You see Liu Bang, future emperor, rising through ambition, instinct, and survival. But beside him, always watching, Lu. And that matters more than people realize, because while men fight wars openly, women inside political worlds often fight differently, through memory, through patience, through understanding exactly who holds influence long before anyone else notices. Lu learns all of it, not from luxury, from danger. You feel it in the instability surrounding their rise, alliances changing overnight, military leaders switching loyalty when survival demands it, families destroyed because they trusted the wrong person at the wrong time. And somewhere inside all that chaos, Lu becomes hard to deceive, because survival teaches pattern recognition quickly. You can almost feel her studying every room she enters, who speaks first, who hesitates, who pretends loyalty too perfectly. Because empires are not built only through battlefields, they are built through people, and people are unpredictable. Eventually, Liu Bang wins. Against impossible odds, he founds the Han dynasty and becomes emperor. And suddenly, the woman who survived civil war beside him enters the most dangerous place in China, the imperial court. Because battlefields kill quickly, palaces kill slowly. You feel it immediately, concubines competing for influence, officials maneuvering for power, families positioning themselves around the throne like planets around the sun. And at the center, Lu. No longer just a wife, now empress. But power inside palaces is fragile, especially for women, because an empress is respected, until a younger concubine gains favor, until a son threatens succession, until the emperor changes his mind. And Liu Bang? He does change. You see it in the rise of consort Qi, beautiful, favored, dangerous in the way favored people often become dangerous without realizing it. Because affection inside imperial courts is never only affection, it's politics. And when Liu Bang begins considering replacing Lu's son with Qi's child as heir, everything changes. Now this is no longer rivalry, it's survival again. Because in imperial China, losing influence at the top rarely means embarrassment, it means destruction. And Lu knows it. That's what makes her terrifying. Not cruelty alone, awareness. She understands exactly how quickly powerful women become disposable once men stop protecting them. So she prepares, quietly, carefully, the same way she always has. Because Lu doesn't rule through dramatic speeches. She rules through patience, through waiting longer than everyone else, through understanding one brutal truth better than anyone around her. Power belongs to whoever survives the longest, and she intends to survive everyone. Right as the imperial court begins tightening into something deadly, because next, the emperor dies, and the woman everyone underestimated becomes the most feared person in China.
When the emperor dies, the palace does not mourn for long, because grief inside imperial courts has an expiration date.
power does not. You feel it immediately after the death of Emperor Gaozu of Han. The atmosphere shifts before the funeral incense even fades. Officials begin calculating. Families begin aligning themselves. Servants suddenly become careful about whose rooms they enter first. Because now, everything depends on who controls the throne next. And technically, that answer already exists. Lu's son becomes emperor, young, inexperienced, easy to influence. At least that's what everyone assumes. But they make the same mistake again. They look at the young emperor and fail to notice who is standing behind him. Empress Lu, waiting. Because Lu understands something almost no one else fully grasps yet. The throne does not belong only to the person sitting on it. It belongs to the person controlling access to it. And very quickly, that person becomes her. You see it in the way the court changes around her. Not loudly at first, quietly. Officials loyal to rival factions begin disappearing from influence. Certain advisors suddenly lose favor. Decisions start passing through Lu before they reach the emperor. And within the palace, everyone notices. Because the balance of power has shifted completely. The young emperor may wear the crown, but Lu controls the empire. And now, she remembers every threat, especially consort Qi. Because Lu never forgot what Qi represented. Not simply a rival for affection, a direct threat to her son's survival. And in courts like this, threats are rarely forgiven. You can feel the tension tightening around Qi long before anything happens. Servants avoiding eye contact, whispers stopping when she enters a room. The terrible awareness spreading slowly that imperial favor has vanished, and protection vanished with it. Because one of the cruelest truths of palace life is this: the moment powerful men die, the women they protected often become vulnerable overnight. And Lu? She has spent too many years vulnerable herself to feel mercy now. What happens next becomes legend, dark legend. The kind historians repeat in lowered voices centuries later, because the details feel almost too brutal to believe. Punishments beyond humiliation, cruelty transformed into warning, a message sent to the entire court in blood and terror. And whether every story told later is fully true almost stops mattering. Because what matters is the reputation created afterward. Lu becomes feared, deeply feared, not because she merely punishes enemies, because she removes them completely. You feel the emotional temperature of the court change instantly. No one laughs carelessly anymore. No one underestimates her again. No one forgets what survival inside this palace actually costs. And that fear, it gives Lu something extraordinarily rare for a woman in ancient imperial China. Control. Real control. Not symbolic influence. Not temporary favor. Authority strong enough to shape the empire itself. You see it in the years that follow. Members of the Lu family rise into positions of power. Political rivals are neutralized before they can organize opposition. The machinery of the Han dynasty begins bending around her decisions. And for the first time, the empire starts looking less like a dynasty ruled by emperors, and more like one ruled by Lu. That's the moment she becomes historically dangerous. Because women inside imperial systems were expected to influence quietly, not dominate openly. And yet, here she is. Not hidden behind curtains, not waiting for permission, not pretending the emperor controls decisions everyone knows she is making. She becomes something China had rarely seen before. A woman ruling an empire not from the shadows, but through them. And the terrifying part? She's good at it. Because every lesson learned during war, instability and palace politics now sharpens into strategy. Lu understands loyalty, understands fear, understands timing. Most importantly, she understands survival. And survival, in imperial courts, often matters more than morality. You can almost feel the contradiction growing around her reputation. To some, she becomes monstrous. To others, necessary. Because the Han dynasty remains stable under her control. The government functions. The empire survives transition. Order continues. And history has always struggled with women who rule effectively while terrifying everyone around them. Especially women who refuse softness completely. So the stories about Lu grow larger, darker, more brutal with every generation. But beneath all the fear and legend, one truth remains impossible to ignore. The woman everyone once underestimated outlived almost all of them. Right as fear transforms into true imperial authority, because next, Lu stops merely surviving the empire and begins reshaping it around herself completely.
And once a ruler reshapes the empire around themselves, something strange happens. The court stops asking whether they belong in power and starts asking what happens when they're gone. That's where Empress Lu becomes truly unsettling to the men surrounding her, because by now she is no longer temporary, not a grieving widow, not a regent holding power briefly for a young emperor, a force. The Han court bends around her decisions so completely that people begin navigating the palace as if Lu herself is the dynasty. And in many ways, she is. You feel it in how carefully everyone moves now, officials measuring every word, princes watching alliances shift before they fully understand why. Entire noble families surviving or collapsing, depending on whether Lu trusts them. Because she doesn't merely control power anymore, she controls proximity to power, and that is far more dangerous. You see it in the rise of the Lu clan, brothers elevated, relatives promoted, family members placed strategically across military and political positions. To critics, it looks ruthless. To Lu, it looks necessary, because she remembers exactly how fragile women become once powerful men disappear, and she refuses to let her family stand unprotected the way she once did. That's what makes her rule feel so cold to later historians. Everything becomes survival strategy. Trust only blood, remove threats early, never wait for mercy from rivals. Because Lu has lived too long inside imperial politics to believe mercy lasts. You can almost feel the emotional isolation surrounding her now. Not loneliness like Anna of Russia, something sharper, suspicion. Because rulers who survive through caution eventually begin seeing danger everywhere. And in Lu's world, they are usually correct. Plots against the throne remain constant. Princes still carry ambition. Officials still whisper behind closed doors. The difference now is that everyone knows Lu hears about it eventually. That reputation alone becomes a weapon. People fear not simply punishment, but inevitability, because Lu is patient. That's what terrifies the court most. Not rage, not unpredictability, calculation. The understanding that she may wait months or years before removing an enemy, but she rarely forgets one. You feel it in the atmosphere of the palace itself, silk corridors glowing softly under lantern light, servants walking carefully enough to seem almost invisible, ministers bowing lower than necessary because nobody wants to risk appearing insufficiently loyal. And at the center, Lu, watching, always watching. That's the irony history struggles with, because despite the fear surrounding her, the empire remains stable, trade continues, administration functions. The Han dynasty survives one of the most dangerous transitions any empire faces, the death of its founder. And historically, many dynasties never recover from that moment. The fact that the Han dynasty does recover, that matters. But history often prefers women to be either admirable or monstrous, not effective and frightening at the same time.
So the stories surrounding Lu grow darker over centuries, some true, some exaggerated, some transformed into warning tales about female power itself. And yet, even beneath the legend, you can still see the real woman underneath if you look carefully enough. A woman born into chaos, a woman who survived civil war, a woman who watched powerful men rise and fall constantly, and learned the same lesson every time. Power never protects you unless you seize enough of it yourself. That lesson shapes everything she becomes, including the thing that ultimately limits her. Because the more tightly rulers hold power, the more fragile succession becomes after them. And Lu's control becomes so complete that the empire begins depending on her personally, not the system, her. You can feel the tension building late in her life. Not rebellion exactly, waiting. Because many powerful families inside the Han court understand something important. As long as Lu lives, they cannot move openly. But one day, she will die. And when that day comes, everything she built around herself will be tested immediately. That's the danger of ruling through personal authority instead of shared stability. It creates strength, but strength difficult to inherit. And somewhere deep inside the palace, Lu probably understands that too. Because rulers this intelligent usually see the ending long before everyone else does. But by then, there is no softer version of herself left to become. Only the Empress. Only the woman who survived everyone else by refusing vulnerability completely. So we leave her here, not during the punishments, not during the terror, but at the height of her control. Because that's where the contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. A woman feared by history, who may also have been the reason the dynasty survived at all. If this story stayed with you, if you felt the tension between survival, fear, and power, don't stop here. There are more women like her. Women history called dangerous because they ruled too effectively to ignore. Subscribe and come back for the next chapter. Next time, we step into a queen whose beauty became mythology and whose ambition nearly destroyed kingdoms. Stay dangerous, stay loud, and never let them hold the pen.